Haarlem, Netherlands. March 1943. A pistol fires. A woman slumps forward on a park bench. Dead. The shooter is a girl with braided pigtails. She looks 12. She is actually 16. Her name is Freddy Overstegen. She just killed a Dutch collaborator carrying a list of every Jew in the region. Names, addresses, families. That list would have sent hundreds to the gas chambers. Freddy saved them all with one bullet. She puts the gun away, climbs on her bicycle, and pedals home like nothing happened. By May 1945, she and her sister will assassinate dozens of Nazi officers and Dutch traitors. The exact number nobody knows. When asked, Freddy always said the same thing. One should not ask a soldier any of that. She was 14 when she started killing. This is her story. May 10, 1940. Nazi Germany invades the Netherlands. The Dutch army fights for 5 days, then surrenders. German soldiers flood every street. Nazi flags go up on every building. The occupation begins. Freddy is 14. Her sister Truus is 16. They live in a tiny apartment in Haarlem with their mother Trintje. They sleep on mattresses stuffed with straw. They have almost nothing. But their mother is a communist who taught them one thing. When you see injustice, you act. The deportations start within months. Jews are forced to wear yellow stars. Then they disappear. Trains roll east toward Poland, toward Auschwitz, toward death. The Dutch people watch. 90% keep their heads down. 5% collaborate with the Nazis. 5% resist. Freddy and Truus will become the deadliest members of that 5%. Their mother had been hiding refugees for years. Jewish families fleeing Germany. Political fugitives. Strangers who needed a place to sleep. Freddy and Truus grew up sharing their beds with people whose names they never knew. They made dolls for children in the Spanish Civil War. They learned early that comfort means nothing when others are suffering. When the Nazis came, the Overstegen family did not hide. They fought back immediately. Freddy and Truus distributed illegal newspapers at night. They pasted anti-Nazi messages over German propaganda posters. They raced through dark streets on bicycles with their hearts pounding. If caught, they would be shot. But nobody suspected 2 young girls on bicycles. In 1941, a man knocked on their door. Frans van der Wiel, commander of the Haarlem Council of Resistance. He had heard about the Overstegen family, the mother who hid Jews, the daughters who spread illegal pamphlets. He wanted to recruit them. Can your daughters join the resistance? Their mother said yes. Freddy said yes. Truus said yes. But van der Wiel needed to test them first. He needed to know they would not break. Days later, he burst through their door dressed as a Gestapo officer. He screamed in German. He waved a pistol. He demanded to know where a Jewish man was hiding. He threatened arrest, torture, execution. Freddy and Truus attacked him. They kicked, they punched, they bit. They thought he was a Nazi, and they fought anyway. They refused to give up a single name, even facing death. Van der Wiel stopped. He revealed who he really was. They had passed. Now he told them what joining the resistance actually meant. You will learn to sabotage bridges. You will learn to blow up railway lines. He paused. And you will learn to shoot Nazis. Truus looked at her 14-year-old sister. Freddy grinned. Well, that is something I have never done before. Their mother gave them one piece of advice. Always stay human. They were taken to an underground potato shed. There, beneath the earth, they learned to kill. They practiced shooting for hours. They learned to aim, to stay calm, to pull the trigger without hesitation. 2 teenage girls becoming weapons. Their first mission was arson. Nazi warehouses needed to burn, but SS soldiers guarded them. The resistance needed a distraction. That distraction was Freddy and Truus. They walked up to the guards and smiled. They chatted, they laughed, they flirted. The guards relaxed. What threat could 2 teenage girls possibly be? Behind them, resistance fighters slipped through the shadows. Minutes later, the warehouses burned. The guards never suspected the pretty girls they had just been talking to. Vanderveel understood immediately. These sisters could go places men could not. Their innocence was the most powerful weapon in the resistance arsenal. Then came the first kill order. The target was not a German. It was a Dutch woman. A collaborator. She had compiled a list of every Jew in the region. Names, addresses. She planned to hand it to the Nazis within days. That list meant death for hundreds of innocent people. Freddie received the assignment. She rode her bicycle to a park. She found the woman on a bench. She walked up casually. Just a girl with braids taking a stroll. She smiled sweetly. "What is your name?" the woman told her. Freddie confirmed the target. She pulled out her pistol. She looked the woman in the eyes. She fired. The woman died instantly. Freddie put the gun away. She climbed on her bicycle. She rode home. Years later, she described what it felt like. The first thing you want to do when you shoot somebody is to pick them up. The instinct to help even after you have killed them. That feeling never left her. But she kept killing anyway. Freddie and Truus developed their own methods. The forest technique was their specialty. One sister would go to a bar where German officers gathered. She would approach an officer, chat with him, laugh at his jokes, touch his arm, lean in close. "Would you like to go for a stroll in the woods?" The officer always said yes. They would walk deeper into the forest, away from the roads, away from witnesses. And there, hidden among the trees, the other sister waited. One bullet to the head. The officer fell. They left his body in a hole that had already been dug. They walked away. The bicycle method was faster. Truus pedaled. Freddie sat on the back with a pistol. They identified the target walking down the street. They rode past. Freddie fired. They kept riding. Just two girls on a bicycle. "We always went by bike," Truus explained later. "Never walked. That was too dangerous. I always made sure the coast was clear. That worked very well. The doorstep method was the most direct. They followed a target home, learned his address, his routine. Then they knocked on his door. When he opened it, he saw a young girl. Innocent, harmless. By the time he realized the danger, he was already dead. They focused increasingly on Dutch collaborators, traitors who turned in their Jewish neighbors for money, citizens who worked for the Gestapo, people who betrayed their own countrymen. "We were dealing with cancerous tumors in society," Truus said. "You had to cut them out like a surgeon. You could not arrest them. You could not try them. There was no other solution." In 1943, a third member joined their unit. Hannie Schaft, 21 years old, bright red hair, green eyes, pale skin. The kind of face people remembered. Hannie was different from the Overstegen sisters. She came from a middle-class family. Her father was a teacher. She was studying law at the University of Amsterdam. She wanted to become a human rights lawyer. Then the Nazis demanded all students sign a loyalty pledge to Germany. Hannie refused. She was expelled. She did not go home. She joined the resistance. Vanderveel tested her the same way. He gave her a gun, sent her to kill a Nazi officer. She approached the target. Raised the weapon. Her hands shook. She pulled the trigger. Click. Empty. It was a test. She passed. Now they were three. Hannie was the planner, the intellectual. She thought through every detail. Truus was the leader. Decisive. Fearless. She made the hard calls. Freddie was the scout. She mapped everything in advance. She knew every escape route. Together they were unstoppable. They did not only kill, they blew up railway lines to stop deportation trains. They smuggled Jewish children across borders in the middle of the night. They stole identity papers, forged documents, helped refugees disappear. They gathered intelligence on German troop movements and passed it to the Allies. Then came an order that tested everything they believed. The target was Arthur Seyss Inquart, Reich Commissioner of the Netherlands. one of the most powerful Nazis in the country. The mission was to kidnap his children, use them as leverage to free resistance prisoners. If he refused, kill the children. Freddy refused. Truus refused. Hanny refused. "We are not Hitlerites," Freddy said. Resistance fighters do not murder children. They had killed many people. They would kill more. But children, never. That was the line between resistance and terrorism, between fighting evil and becoming it. They would not cross it. One afternoon, Truus was cycling through the streets when she witnessed something that would haunt her forever. A Dutch SS soldier had grabbed an infant from a family. The father was screaming. The baby's sister was crying. The soldier held the baby up and smashed it against a wall. Truus stopped her bicycle. She pulled out her pistol. She shot the soldier dead, right there in the middle of the street. No orders, no mission, no plan. That was not an assignment, she said later. But I do not regret it. By 1944, Hannie Schaft was one of the most wanted people in the Netherlands. Her red hair had been spotted at too many scenes. Witnesses described her. The Nazis issued a bulletin across the country. Find the girl with the red hair. Hannie dyed her hair black. She started wearing glasses. She changed her appearance as much as possible. But she did not stop fighting. She could not stop. Too many people depended on her. The resistance grew bolder, more dangerous, more deadly. Nazi officers disappeared from the streets of Haarlem. Collaborators were found dead in forests and doorways. The German command was furious. They increased patrols. They offered rewards for information. They executed suspected resistance members publicly as warnings. None of it stopped the three young women. They kept killing. They kept saving lives. They kept fighting. But the Nazis were closing in. They had descriptions. They had informants. They had resources the resistance could not match. It was only a matter of time before someone made a mistake. In June 1944, Hannie and a fellow fighter named Jan Bonekamp were assigned to kill a collaborator named Willem Ragout. They found him. Bonekamp shot him. But Ragout did not die immediately. In the chaos, Bonekamp was shot in the stomach. Hannie escaped. Bonekamp was captured. They took him to a hospital. He was dying. The Nazis interrogated him anyway. He refused to talk. Then an officer pretended to be a resistance member. He told Bonekamp he was a friend, that he wanted to help. Bonekamp was delirious from blood loss and medication. He believed him. He gave up Hannie's address. The Nazis raided her parents' home. They arrested her mother and father, sent them to a concentration camp. Hannie went into hiding. She could not fight anymore. If captured, everyone she knew would die. For months, she stayed underground, waiting, hiding, unable to act while her country suffered. But Freddy and Truus kept fighting. They could not stop. Every day, more Jews were deported. Every day, more Dutch citizens collaborated. Every day, the Nazis tightened their grip. The war was turning. The Allies were advancing. Liberation was coming. Everyone could feel it. The Nazis knew they were losing. That made them more dangerous, more desperate, more brutal. March 21st, 1945. The war is almost over. Allied forces are weeks away from liberating the Netherlands. Hannie Schaft is cycling through Haarlem. She is carrying copies of an illegal communist newspaper and a pistol. She is stopped at a Nazi checkpoint. They search her. They find everything. She is arrested. In Part 2, we will follow Hannie into the Nazi prison. We will witness her interrogation, her torture, the moment they discovered her red roots growing beneath the black dye. We will hear the final words she spoke to her executioner just seconds before he pulled the trigger. Words that still echo through Dutch history today. And we will learn how Freddy and Truus survived the war only to be forgotten by the country they saved. Haarlem, Netherlands, March 1945. A young woman with black hair cycles through the streets. She carries illegal newspapers in her basket, a pistol hidden beneath them. She has killed more Nazi officers than she can count. Her name is Hannie Schaft. The Nazis have been hunting her for 2 years. They call her the girl with the red hair. She dyed it black to survive. But her roots are growing back. She approaches a checkpoint. German soldiers wave her down. They search her basket. They find everything. Hannie Schaft is captured. She has 18 days left to live. In part 1, we saw how 2 teenage sisters became the deadliest resistance fighters in the Netherlands. Freddie Overstegen started killing at 14. Her sister Truus at 16. They seduced Nazi officers and led them into forests. They shot collaborators on park benches. They burned warehouses and blew up railway lines. Then Hannie Schaft joined them. A law student with red hair who refused to sign a Nazi loyalty pledge. Together they assassinated dozens of Germans and Dutch traitors. But now Hannie is gone, captured. And the war is almost over. Liberation is weeks away. The Nazis know they are losing. That makes them more dangerous than ever. The soldiers at the checkpoint drag Hannie to the Wetteringschans prison in Amsterdam. They throw her into a cell. The interrogations begin immediately. They want names. Every resistance fighter she knows. Every safe house. Every escape route. Every Jew still hiding in the Netherlands. Hannie gives them nothing. They beat her. She stays silent. They starve her. She stays silent. They keep her in solitary confinement for days. She stays silent. The interrogators grow frustrated. They know they have captured someone important, but they cannot break her. Then one morning, an officer notices something. Her hair is black, but the roots growing in are red. They have found her. The girl with the red hair. The assassin who has haunted them for years. The woman responsible for killing their officers in forests and on street corners. They finally have her. Hannie admits to her assassinations. She confesses what she has done. She tells them about the Nazi officers she killed, the collaborators she executed, the railway lines she destroyed. But she never gives up a single name. Not Freddie, not Truus, not one member of the resistance. She protects her friends until the very end. The interrogations continue for weeks. They torture her for information she will not give. They threaten her with execution. She knows she is going to die. She accepts it. But she will not betray the people she loves. Meanwhile, Freddie and Truus keep fighting. They cannot stop. Every day the Nazis execute more resistance members. Every day more Jews are discovered and deported. Every day brings more death. But every day also brings the Allies closer. April 1945. The war is collapsing for Germany. American and British forces push east. Soviet forces push west. The Nazi Empire is crumbling. In the Netherlands, everyone knows liberation is coming. Days, maybe weeks, but the Nazis refuse to stop killing. Willy Lages is the head of the SD in Amsterdam, the Sicherheitsdienst, the Nazi intelligence service. He has executed hundreds of resistance fighters during the occupation. He knows the war is lost. He does not care. He wants Hannie Schaft dead before the liberation. There is an agreement between the Nazis and the Dutch resistance. A ceasefire. No more executions until the war officially ends. Lages ignores it. April 17, 1945. 18 days before the Netherlands will be liberated. The war is over. Everyone knows it. Germany has weeks left at most. 2 Dutch collaborators receive their orders, Matthias Schmitz and Martin Kuiper. They are executioners, traitors who kill their own countrymen for the Nazis. They are told to take Hannie Schaft to the sand dunes of Overveen and shoot her. They drive her out of Amsterdam, past the checkpoints, past the farms, to the dunes where hundreds of resistance fighters have already been killed and buried. 422 bodies lie beneath that sand. They walk her to a clearing. Schmitz raises his pistol. He fires. The bullet grazes Hannie's head. It wounds her. Blood runs down her face, but she does not fall. She stands there, staring at her executioner. A 24-year-old woman who has killed more Nazis than most soldiers, who has saved hundreds of Jewish lives, who has fought longer and harder than anyone expected. She looks at Schmitz and speaks her final words. "I shoot better than you." Kuiper raises his submachine gun. He fires. Hannie Schaft dies in the sand dunes of Overveen. She is the only woman among 422 bodies buried there. She is 24 years old. They bury her in a shallow grave. So shallow that her red hair is still visible above the sand. 18 days later, the Netherlands is liberated. The news of Hannie's death spreads through the resistance. Freddie and Truus learn what happened to their friend. The woman they fought beside. The woman who never broke under torture. The woman who protected them even facing death. Freddie is devastated. For the rest of her life, she will visit Hannie's grave every year. She will leave red roses. She will never forget. But there is no time to mourn. The liberation brings chaos. The collaborators try to flee. The Nazis burn documents. Some escape to Germany. Others hide among the population. The resistance has one final mission. Find the traitors. Schmitz and Kuiper. The men who killed Hannie. They disappear into the chaos. The resistance hunts them. Freddie and Truus hunt them. These men murdered their friend. They will not escape justice. Kuiper is captured first. He is tried for war crimes. He is found guilty of executing resistance fighters. He is sentenced to death. He dies in 1948. Schmitz takes longer to find. He hides for years, changes his name, moves constantly. But the hunters never stop looking. In 1950, he is captured, tried, convicted. He dies in prison in 1952. The men who killed Hannie Schaft pay for their crime. But justice is not so simple for everyone. Willy Lodges, the man who ordered Hannie's execution, the head of the SD, the man responsible for hundreds of deaths. He is captured by the Allies. He is tried at Nuremberg. He is sentenced to death. Then something happens that shocks the resistance. In 1952, his sentence is reduced to life imprisonment. In 1966, he is released from prison. Released. A man who murdered hundreds of Dutch citizens. A man who ignored the ceasefire to kill Hannie Schaft. He walks free because he is dying of cancer. He returns to Germany. He dies in 1971. A free man. The resistance is furious. Freddie and Truus cannot believe it. They risked their lives to fight the Nazis. They killed to protect their country. Their friend was executed 18 days before liberation. And her murderer walks free. This is not the only injustice they face. After the war, Hannie Schaft becomes a national hero. She is given a state funeral. Queen Wilhelmina attends. Thousands line the streets. She is reburied with full military honors. The Queen calls her the symbol of the resistance. Freddie and Truus receive nothing. Why? Because they are communists. Their mother was a communist. They grew up distributing communist pamphlets. During the Cold War, anyone with communist ties is suspicious, dangerous, untrustworthy. The sisters who killed Nazis are treated like enemies. For decades, the Dutch government ignores them. No medals, no recognition, no thank you. They fought for their country, and their country forgot them. Truus copes by making art. She becomes a sculptor. She creates memorials to the resistance. She writes a memoir about what they did. She speaks publicly. She refuses to be forgotten. Freddie chooses a different path. I coped by getting married and having babies. She marries a man named John Decker. She has 3 children. She tries to build a normal life. But the past never lets her go. She suffers from insomnia. Nightmares come without warning. Every year on May 4th, Remembrance Day, she wakes up with dread. The memories of what she did. The faces of the people she killed. The sound of gunshots. The smell of blood. When people ask how many Nazis she killed, she always gives the same answer. One should not ask a soldier any of that. She never says the number. Neither does Truus. Some things you carry alone. They watch as other resistance members receive honors, medals, ceremonies, recognition from the government. They watch as their contributions are written out of history. Two teenage girls who killed more Nazis than most soldiers. Forgotten. The years pass. The 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s, the 1980s. Still nothing. Truus keeps speaking out. She refuses to let their story die. She tells anyone who will listen. We were there. We fought. We killed. We saved lives. Remember us. Finally, in 2014, something changes. Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte invites Freddie and Truus to a ceremony. He awards them the Mobilization War Cross, a military honor for service during World War II. Freddie is 89 years old. Truus is 91. 69 years. They waited 69 years for someone to say thank you. Freddie's son says it was the happiest day of his mother's life. After almost 7 decades, her country finally acknowledged what she did, what she sacrificed, what she lost. Streets in Harlem are named after them. Their story is told in books and documentaries. Finally, people know who they are. But for most of their lives, they lived in silence, unrecognized, unhonored. Two teenage girls who killed Nazis with their bare hands, forgotten by the country they saved. Truus Overstegen dies on June 18, 2016. She is 92 years old. She spent her final years making sure the world knew their story, making sure Hannie Schaft was never forgotten, making sure history recorded what 3 young women did to resist evil. Freddie Overstegen dies on September 5, 2018, one day before her 93rd birthday. Throughout her life, she visited Hannie's grave every year. She left red roses for the friend who did not make it. When asked what advice she had for future generations, Truus said something her mother told her before she joined the resistance. When you have to make a decision, it must be the right one, and you must always remain human. That was the difference between them and the Nazis. Freddie and Truus killed people. They shot men in forests and on street corners. They watched the life leave their enemies' eyes. But they remained human. They cried after every kill. They refused to murder children. They carried the weight of what they did for the rest of their lives. The Nazis killed millions, systematically, industrially, without remorse. They lost their humanity entirely. During World War II, 90% of the Dutch population tried to live normally under Nazi occupation. 5% collaborated with the enemy. 5% joined the resistance. Of that 5%, only a handful of women took up arms. Even fewer killed with their own hands. Freddie Overstegen was one of them. A 14-year-old girl with braided pigtails and a pistol hidden in her bicycle basket. She was not a hero from a movie. There was no dramatic music, no slow motion, no Hollywood ending. Just a teenage girl who decided that some things are worth killing for, and some things are worth dying for. Freddie Truus and Hannie are believed to have killed dozens of Nazis and Dutch collaborators. Some estimates say the number exceeded 100. The exact count died with them. When journalists asked Freddie how many people she killed, she always said the same thing. One should not ask a soldier any of that. She lived to be 92 years old. She never apologized for a single death. She never regretted what she did. She only regretted losing Hannie. In Part 3, we will explore the techniques the Overstegen sisters developed to get close to their targets. The psychology of seduction as a weapon. The moment Truus witnessed a Nazi murder an infant and shot him dead in the street. The mission to kidnap a high-ranking Nazi's children and why they refused. Because there were lines even assassins would not cross. Rules even killers followed. And that is what made them different from the monsters they fought. A Dutch SS soldier grabs an infant from its father's arms. The baby's sister screams. The father begs. The soldier holds the child up and smashes it against a wall. The infant dies instantly. Truus Overstegen stops her bicycle. She pulls out her pistol. She shoots the soldier dead in the middle of the street. No orders, no mission, no plan, just justice. That was not an assignment, she said later, but I do not regret it. In part 1, we saw how Freddy and Truus Overstegen became resistance fighters at 14 and 16. They learned to kill in an underground potato shed. They burned Nazi warehouses. They shot their first collaborator on a park bench. In part 2, we followed Hannie Shaft to her execution. We heard her final words to the man who shot her. I shoot better than you. We watched as the sisters who saved their country were forgotten for 69 years. But there is more to this story. The methods, the psychology, the lines they refuse to cross. How do two teenage girls seduce grown men and lead them to their deaths? How do they remain human while killing? What separates a resistance fighter from a murderer? This is how they did it. The Overstegen sisters developed 3 primary assassination techniques. Each one exploited the same weakness. Nazi officers did not see teenage girls as threats. That blindness cost them their lives. The first method was the forest. One sister would enter a bar or tavern where German officers gathered after duty. She would sit alone, order a drink, wait. Eventually an officer would approach. They always did. A pretty young Dutch girl sitting by herself was irresistible. She would smile, laugh at his jokes, touch his arm, let him buy her drinks. She would lean in close and whisper, "Would you like to go for a stroll in the woods?" The officer always said yes. They would walk into the forest together. She would lead him deeper, away from the roads, away from the tavern, away from witnesses. He thought he was getting lucky. He was walking to his grave. Hidden among the trees, the other sister waited, pistol ready. When the target reached the designated spot, she would step out. 1 bullet to the head. The officer would fall. They would leave his body in a hole that had already been dug. Then both sisters would walk away. Just 2 girls enjoying an evening stroll. Truus described the psychology of it. You had to be flirtatious. You had to make them trust you. They never suspected anything because they never saw women as dangerous. They saw us as entertainment. That was their mistake. The forest method required patience, planning, the ability to act normal while knowing you were about to kill someone. The sisters learned to compartmentalize, to separate the flirting from the killing, to smile sweetly minutes before pulling a trigger. It was not easy. Every time Freddy said later, every time we did it, I felt sick afterward. But we did it anyway. Because if we did not, more people would die. The second method was the bicycle. This technique was faster, more dangerous, required split-second timing. Truus would pedal the bicycle through the streets of Haarlem. Freddy would sit on the back, her pistol hidden under her coat. Ready. They would identify their target walking down the street. A German officer, a Dutch collaborator, someone the resistance had sentenced to death. They would ride past casually. Just 2 sisters sharing a bicycle. Nothing unusual. As they passed the target, Freddy would pull her weapon. Fire. Keep firing until he fell. Then Truus would pedal faster. They would disappear around a corner before anyone understood what happened. We always went by bike, Truus explained. Never walked. That was too dangerous. Walking meant you could be caught. Bicycles meant freedom, speed, escape. The bicycle method killed many collaborators. These were the most dangerous targets. Dutch citizens who betrayed their own people, who turned in Jewish neighbors for money, who worked for the Gestapo identifying resistance members. They deserved death, and they received it. The third method was the doorstep. This was the most direct, the most personal, the most cold-blooded. The sisters would follow a target for days, learn his address, his routine, when he left for work, when he returned, who lived with him. They would map every detail. Then they would knock on his door. When he opened it, he would see a young girl, braided hair, innocent face. Perhaps she was lost. Perhaps she needed help. Perhaps she was selling something. By the time he realized the danger, it was too late. Freddie would raise her pistol, fire, walk away. Another traitor dead. The doorstep method required the most nerve. You were looking directly into someone's eyes when you killed them. No distance, no anonymity, just you and them and the gun between. Years later, Freddie described what that felt like. The first thing you want to do when you shoot somebody is to pick them up. You want to help them, even after you just killed them. That instinct never goes away, you just learn to ignore it. These three methods killed dozens of Nazi officers and Dutch collaborators. The exact number remains unknown. When asked, neither sister would say. One should not ask a soldier any of that. Some secrets die with those who carry them. But killing was not all they did. The Oversteegen sisters and Hannie Schaft also saved lives. They blew up railway lines to stop deportation trains. Trains packed with Jewish men, women, and children heading to concentration camps. One destroyed section of track could delay a transport for days. Sometimes that delay meant survival. Sometimes it meant escape. They smuggled Jewish children out of the Netherlands, walking them across borders in the middle of the night, through forests, across rivers, past German patrols. One wrong move meant death for everyone. They made those journeys dozens of times. They stole identity papers from government offices, forged documents, created fake identities for refugees, gave them new names, new histories, new lives. Hundreds of Jews survived the war because of papers the sisters provided. They gathered intelligence on German troop movements, mapped patrol routes, counted soldiers, noted supply shipments, passed everything to Allied forces. Information that helped plan bombing raids and invasion routes. The killing was necessary, but the saving was the purpose. We were not murderers, Truus insisted. We were soldiers. There is a difference. Murderers kill for pleasure, for power, for themselves. Soldiers kill to protect others. Every Nazi we shot was a Nazi who could not kill anyone else. But there were limits. Lines they refused to cross. Rules they would not break. In 1944, an order came from resistance leadership. The target was Arthur Seyss-Inquart, Reich Commissioner of the Netherlands, one of the most powerful Nazis in the country, the man responsible for thousands of deaths. The mission was not to kill him. It was to kidnap his children. The plan was simple. Take the children. Use them as leverage. Demand the release of captured resistance fighters. If Seyss-Inquart refused, kill the children. Freddie refused the mission immediately. We are not Hitlerites, she said. Resistance fighters do not murder children. Truus agreed. So did Hannie. They would not do it. This was the line, the boundary between fighting evil and becoming it. They had killed many people. They would kill more. But children were innocent. Children were not responsible for their parents' sins. Children deserved protection, not execution. The leadership was furious. This mission could free dozens of prisoners, could save many lives. Was that not worth the lives of a few Nazi children? No, the sisters said. Never. They were never given the mission. Other resistance members felt the same way. The plan was abandoned. Some lines cannot be crossed. This decision haunted Truus for the rest of her life. Not because she regretted it, but because she wondered. Were they right? Would killing those children have saved more lives in the end? Was their morality a luxury they could not afford? She never found an answer. Some questions have no solution. But she remained certain of one thing. If they had killed those children, they would have become exactly what they were fighting against. They would have lost themselves, lost their humanity, become monsters wearing the masks of heroes. That was the difference. The Nazis killed children without remorse, systematically, industrially, millions of them. Jewish children, Polish children, Romani children, disabled children, anyone they considered unworthy of life. The Oversteegen sisters refused, even when ordered, even when it might have helped the war effort, even when logic said it made sense. Some things matter more than victory. Some principles cannot be sacrificed. Truus witnessed what happened when those principles disappeared. The day she saw the soldier murder the infant was not unique. It was policy, Nazi policy. Kill the undesirable. Eliminate the weak. Purify the race. She shot that soldier not because she was ordered to. She shot him because he deserved to die. Because justice demanded it. Because some acts are so evil they require immediate response. That was the psychology that kept them human. They did not kill randomly. They did not kill for pleasure. Every target was chosen carefully. Every assassination was justified. Every bullet served a purpose. When the war ended, they did not become serial killers. They did not continue murdering. They stopped. Because the killing had never been about the killing itself. It was always about protection, about saving lives, about fighting evil. The moment evil was defeated, the killing ended. That is the difference between a soldier and a psychopath. A soldier stops when the war is over. A psychopath never stops. Freddy and Truus stopped. They put down their weapons. They tried to build normal lives. They succeeded mostly. They had families, careers, homes. They lived to old age. But the memories never left. The faces of the men they killed. The sound of gunshots. The smell of blood. The feeling of pulling a trigger and watching someone die. Freddy had nightmares for the rest of her life. Every year on May 4th, Remembrance Day, she woke up with dread. The past came back whether she wanted it or not. Truus channeled her memories into art. Sculptures of resistance fighters. Memorials to the dead. Monuments that would remind future generations what happened and why. They dealt with their trauma differently, but they both carried it. Every killer does. In Part 4, we will explore what happened after the war. The decades of silence. The betrayal by their own government. The moment 69 years later when the Prime Minister of the Netherlands finally said thank you. Because the story of Freddy and Truus Overstegen is not just about killing Nazis. It is about what a society owes to those who protect it. About memory and forgetting. About the price of heroism and who pays it. Their war ended in 1945. Their struggle for recognition lasted until 2014. That final chapter is coming next. A 14-year-old girl with braided pigtails learns to fire a pistol in an underground potato shed. She kills her first Nazi collaborator on a park bench at 16. By the war's end, she and her sister have assassinated dozens of German officers and Dutch traitors. They seduced men in bars, led them into forests, shot them in the head. They blew up railway lines, smuggled Jewish children across borders, saved hundreds of lives. Then, the war ended, and their country forgot them. In Part 1, we saw Freddy and Truus Overstegen become killers. In Part 2, we watched Hannie Schaft die in the sand dunes 18 days before liberation. In Part 3, we learned their methods. The forest, the bicycle, the doorstep. 3 techniques that made them the deadliest female resistance fighters in Dutch history. But what happened after? What becomes of teenage assassins when the war is over? What price do heroes pay when their nation no longer needs them? This is the final chapter, and it is the cruelest one. May 5th, 1945. The Netherlands is liberated. Church bells ring across the country. People flood the streets, dancing, crying, embracing strangers. 5 years of Nazi occupation are finally over. Freddy is 19. Truus is 21. They have spent the last 4 years killing. Now they must learn to live. The transition is brutal. There is no counseling for teenage assassins. No therapy for girls who seduced men and shot them in forests. No support groups for resistance fighters who watched friends die. They are simply expected to return to normal life. As if normal life still exists. As if they can forget what they did. As if the nightmares will just stop. Truus throws herself into activism. She joins the Communist Party officially. She organizes. She protests. She refuses to be silent. The war may be over, but injustice continues. She will fight it the only way she knows how. Freddie takes a different path. I coped by getting married and having babies. She marries Jan Decker. She has 3 children. She builds a home. She tries to become a normal Dutch housewife. But the past never lets her go. The nightmares start immediately. They never stop. For the rest of her life, Freddie wakes up screaming. She sees the faces of the men she killed. She hears the gunshots. She smells the blood. Every year on May 4th, Dutch Remembrance Day, she cannot sleep at all. The memories return whether she wants them or not. Neither sister talks about what they did. Not to their husbands. Not to their children. Not to anyone. The war is something to be buried, hidden, forgotten. Except their country does not want to remember them anyway. Hannie Schaft becomes a national hero. Her execution 18 days before liberation makes her a martyr. She receives a state funeral. Queen Wilhelmina attends. Thousands line the streets. She is reburied with full military honors in a special cemetery in Haarlem. Streets are named after her, statues erected, books written. Freddie and Truus receive nothing. No medals, no recognition, no thank you. Not a single acknowledgement from the Dutch government. They risked their lives for their country, and their country pretends they do not exist. Why? Because they are communists. The Cold War begins almost immediately after World War II ends. The Soviet Union becomes the enemy. Communism becomes dangerous. Anyone with communist ties is suspicious, subversive, untrustworthy. Freddie and Truus grew up with a communist mother. They distributed communist pamphlets as children. They joined the Communist Party after the war. In the eyes of the Dutch government, this makes them potential enemies, not heroes. Threats. The same government that did almost nothing to resist the Nazis now punishes the women who did. It is a betrayal beyond comprehension. The years pass. The 1950s, the 1960s, the 1970s. Other resistance fighters receive honors, medals, ceremonies, government recognition. Freddie and Truus watch from the sidelines. Invisible, forgotten, erased from history. Truus refuses to accept it. She becomes a sculptor. She creates art about the resistance. Memorials to the fallen. Monuments to those who fought. She writes a memoir. She speaks publicly about what they did. She gives interviews. She tells their story to anyone who will listen. If the government will not remember us, she says, I will make sure history does. Freddie stays quiet. She raises her family. She tends her garden. She visits Hannie's grave every year and leaves red roses. She does not seek recognition. She does not demand medals. She just wants peace. But peace never comes. The nightmares continue. The memories persist. The weight of what she did grows heavier with each passing year. When people ask how many Nazis she killed, she always gives the same answer. One should not ask a soldier any of that. She never says the number. Some burdens cannot be shared. Meanwhile, justice for the collaborators proves uneven. Martin Kuyper. The man who fired the final shots that killed Hannie Schaft is captured, tried, convicted, executed in 1948. Justice served. Matthias Schmitz, the man whose first shot only grazed Hannie's head, hides for years. He is finally captured in 1950. Convicted. Dies in prison in 1952. Justice served. But Willy Lages, the man who ordered Hannie's execution, escapes death. He is captured, tried at Nuremberg, sentenced to death. Then his sentence is reduced to life imprisonment. Then in 1966 he is released. Released. A man responsible for hundreds of deaths walks free because he has cancer. He returns to Germany, dies in 1971. A free man. The resistance is outraged. Freddie and Truus cannot believe it. They killed to protect their country. Their friend was murdered 18 days before liberation, and her killer walks free. This is the reward for heroism. Forgotten by your government. watching your friend's murderer go unpunished, carrying nightmares alone for decades. But there is one more injustice, the deepest one. Freddie and Truus are not just forgotten. They are deliberately excluded. In the decades after the war, the Dutch resistance becomes mythologized. Stories are told. Heroes are celebrated. But the stories center on men. The heroes are male. Women are mentioned as helpers, supporters, nurses, not fighters, not killers. The idea that teenage girls could seduce and assassinate Nazi officers does not fit the narrative. It is uncomfortable, disturbing. It challenges assumptions about femininity and violence, so it is simply ignored. Freddie and Truus are written out of history, not because anyone disputes what they did, but because what they did makes people uncomfortable. Two girls who killed Nazis with their bare hands, who looked men in the eyes and pulled the trigger, who remained human while committing acts of calculated violence. The story is too complex, too unsettling, easier to forget. Decades pass. Both women grow old. Truus keeps fighting for recognition. Freddie keeps her silence. Neither expects anything to change. Then, something extraordinary happens. In 2014, Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte invites Freddie and Truus to a ceremony. 69 years after the war ended. 69 years of silence. 69 years of being ignored, dismissed, forgotten. He awards them the Mobilization War Cross, a military honor for exceptional service during World War II. Freddie is 89 years old. Truus is 91. They have waited almost 7 decades for this moment. Freddie's son later said it was the happiest day of his mother's life. After all those years, someone finally said thank you. Someone finally acknowledged what she sacrificed, what she lost, what she did for her country. Streets in Harlem are named after them. Their story appears in books and documentaries. Finally, people know who they are. But for most of their lives, they lived in shadow. Two teenage girls who killed more Nazis than most soldiers, forgotten by the country they saved. Truus Overstegen dies on June 18, 2016. She is 92 years old. She spent her final years making sure their story was told. Making sure Hanny was never forgotten. Making sure history recorded what 3 young women did to resist evil. She never stopped fighting. Not in the war. Not after. Freddie Overstegen dies on September 5, 2018. One day before her 93rd birthday. She spent her final years at peace. The recognition had come. The story had been told. She could rest. Throughout her life, she visited Hanny's grave. She left red roses for the friend who did not survive. The friend whose final words were, "I shoot better than you." The friend who protected them even under torture. When asked what advice she had for future generations, Truus repeated what her mother told them before they joined the resistance. When you have to make a decision, it must be the right one. And you must always remain human. That was the lesson. That was the legacy. Not the killing, not the methods, not the body count, the humanity. Freddie and Truus killed people. They shot men in forests and on doorsteps. They watched life leave their enemies' eyes. But they remained human. They cried after every kill. They refused to murder children. They felt the weight of what they did until their last breath. The Nazis killed millions. Systematically, industrially, without remorse. They lost their humanity entirely. They became machines of death. That is the difference between monsters and those who fight them. Not the killing itself, but what it costs, what you feel, what you carry. During World War II, 90% of the Dutch population tried to live normally under Nazi occupation. They kept their heads down. They survived. They waited for someone else to do something. 5% collaborated. They betrayed their neighbors for money. They turned in Jews for rewards. They worked for the enemy. 5% resisted. They fought back. They risked everything. They died by the thousands. Of that 5%, only a handful of women took up arms. Even fewer killed with their own hands. Freddie Overstegen was one of them. A 14-year-old girl with braided pigtails and a pistol in her bicycle basket. Not a soldier, not a spy, just a girl who decided that some things are worth killing for, and some things are worth dying for. She did not ask for medals. She did not seek glory. She did what needed to be done. Then she lived with it for 73 years. If you know of other forgotten heroes from World War II, share their stories in the comments. History is full of people who did extraordinary things and were never recognized. Every story told is a memory preserved. Freddie Truce and Hanny killed an estimated 100 Nazi officers and Dutch collaborators. The exact number died with them. They saved hundreds of Jewish lives. They delayed countless deportations. They inspired a nation. And for 69 years, that nation forgot them. This is their memorial. This is their recognition. This is their story finally told. When Freddie was asked if she regretted anything, she had only one answer. I only regret losing Hanny. From a 14-year-old girl on a bicycle to one of the deadliest assassins of World War II. From a forgotten hero to a national symbol. From silence to recognition. That is the power of refusing to be erased. That is the strength of insisting on truth. That is the legacy of 3 young women who killed Nazis and remained human. Their mother gave them one instruction before they joined the resistance. One rule to follow, no matter what. Always stay human. They did, until the very end.